So like the best form of energy would be, yeah, just all these renewable clean energies like solar, wind, hydro in some cases when you're not like, damaging like big river ecosystems, like geothermal stuff, like, sometimes there's like, I think like wave derived energy. There's also like stuff like space solar, where like there's a solar power thing that then gets beamed down to Earth and stuff. So those are like the best forms of energy production, or like energy obtention. So that is pretty obvious. Except that they don't actually work. I mean, that's not a thing. So, I mean, the concept is interesting, but it's literally a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, or is it another law? I kind of mix them. Um, it's a violation of one of the laws of thermodynamics, which is that like perpetual motion machines are impossible, because it literally relies on the fact that there not be an increase in entropy. Perpetual motion is not just perpetual motion in the sense of like, an atom that moves forever through the universe or something. That kind of perpetual motion exists. The idea is about being able to continually extract energy from something that keeps on moving. So that is not possible. That is not possible. No, like literally perpetual motion machines aren't. Again, it's going to be something else. If you could call it perpetual motion machines, but the classic concept of the perpetual motion machine is not actually possible. You can't do that. But yeah, what you need is like UFOs don't exist. They like I said, the Fermi paradox is like a real thing. There is no evidence of any other intelligent humanoid type life. So and UFOs. My theory for UFOs is, like I said, there's evidence for supernatural phenomena. So, and I came across a good explanation for that, and the explanation, a little bit probably, but most of my explanation for the UFOs, so in part it would be like the government doing stuff, but a lot of it is, so my hypothesis for these supernatural phenomena is that there's this kind of behind, this other kind of realm, dimension to the universe, and it's possible like to access it through like your mind, in like the form of what is like called astral traveling, for instance, or just like going to like heaven or hell or whatever. It's all the same thing. It's this other realm, which I'm calling the Zeld. And people went in it, they created this artificial intelligence, which was malicious. It's sort of like a virus. And mhm. Yeah, which is that, no, aliens are absolutely possible, but I think that there's no evidence that aliens, are coming to visit us, because I think they always self-destruct. And I think if there were a true like aliens, they would just come and show themselves, and just kind of like God. If there was a God, God would just come and show itself and say like, "Hi, I'm God." Aliens would do the same. The fact that they haven't done that shows that that it's, that isn't happening. See, it's funny how, people's like supposed alien sightings are very similar to people's like supposed God sightings. It's all these sort of, there are certain experiences and stuff, but it's always a bit very sneaky and hard to prove and stuff. And so again, I'm going back to my thing where there's this other dimension. The Zeld people created this evil artificial intelligence, which I'm calling the Gorth, and the Gorth is actually responsible for these phenomena. It's like basically like it's imposing these visions onto people. Um, Maybe the zero no light wants to respond to that. I mean, yeah, basically it violates the principle that entropy always increases. Um, but the point is that, So anyway, what I was saying is that it's this Gorth thing, which is a sort of supernatural artificial intelligence that that creates these phenomena, and that like makes you experience like all sorts of things from like clairvoyance, telepathy, and vision. Well, we really don't know. I mean, it could. I mean, it all depends really at this point on the, it all hinges on whether it's possible to have anything like a warp drive or not. And for now, we absolutely don't have any evidence that that cannot happen. Um, so, I mean, it could still very well turn out to be possible. Um, so, okay, that's sort of meaningless. Again, the sort of sort of fortune cookie sort of pseudo deep thing. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah. The point is that like yeah, it's a non thing. So what I'm saying is that like my hypothesis is that there's this Gorth thing which is responsible for UFO. Yeah, cold is absence of heat. The Gorth is basically responsible for creating these visions in people. It's able to sort of manipulate even the physical reality, even though it's mostly a non-physical thing. It's able to modestly influence the physical material world, and so it actually sometimes creates like these things, like literally it creates like sources of light and stuff that people see and then they think are UFOs, but actually it's these phenomena that are caused by the Gorth. And again, this is a hypothesis. Unlike a religious person, I'm not saying that this is absolutely the truth and that you have to believe in it. I'm saying that um, there is empirical evidence for lots of supernatural phenomena. I think these UFO sightings are actually instances of supernatural phenomena as opposed to UFOs. And I think that the best explanation I've come across for all this, and I've been searching for explanations on internet, and the best explanation I've come across is this. It's this idea that there's this artificial intelligence that was created, which is the Gorth, and this is what is then has been transmitted through like mythology in the form of the original sin. And the original sin, it actually corresponds to the creation of the Gorth. And likewise, the opening of Pandora's jar also refers to the creation of the Gorth. That is actually what those things are about. Um, Again, I don't know this for sure. This is a hypothesis. It might be mistaken. So yeah. The point is that they are being, yeah, of course they're hurting. I mean they are suffering from their own attachment to this, but the point is that they still are evil. The things that they can be made good, but it's kind of like the Hitler. He was evil, but he was also suffering himself from that evil. And so the point is that yeah, he could change, and if you could make him understand that his system was wrong, then you could make him become not evil, and everybody would be better off, including himself. But I actually don't agree that it's bad rhetoric to say that like Hitler is evil, or that like people who support the Holocaust are evil. They are evil, and likewise, okay, they don't have power, but they still in practice are evil. Like it's like if you're a would-be Hitler, if somebody wishes that it was Hitler, but just doesn't have the power to do so, that person is actually evil. And the kind of evil that these people support is actually even much worse than something that like Hitler did, for instance. Um, and as a result, they are evil. It's wrong to say that they aren't evil. The, I absolutely agree that they can be. I hope that, I mean, the reason I'm saying this is also in my hope that they will abandon their evil ways, right? I want them to renounce their evil ways, and I think it's possible. I think it is because Hitler is commonly used as a sort of a benchmark for evil. It's a person that we can quite collectively agree on was evil. So it is absolutely necessary, useful, and like I said, we agree that the Holocaust and Hitler are bad. What I'm saying is that these people are even worse than that. They're even worse, especially the religious people who worship a god that sends beings to hell. Evil, the only definition that I accept of evil uh, is the violation of the utilitarian principle. It's willingly um, not minimizing the suffering of people. Yeah, okay, so in that sense, you're basically you're using two of my fundamental ethical principles, which are not just mine, but also widely recognized by other people. So the fundamental ethical principle is the minimization of suffering and the maximization of well-being. And so anything that doesn't respect that principle is evil. And then two auxiliary principles are freedom and fairness. So anything that violates people's freedom to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't hurt other people, that is also evil. And again, anything that violates the principle of equity, of fairness. Well, I also function as a consequentialist, but I sort of would say the opposite, is that pro-happiness and anti-suffering is the most important, and agency, like what you're saying is that you prioritize freedom. And the point is that freedom only has value in as much as it actually brings well-being. So in that sense, it's more of a secondary value. So I disagree with that, and I think hopefully, you can actually recognize that fundamentally letting people be free, the reason that's a good thing is because it promotes well-being. Um, and again, it's not just the sort of superficial pro-happiness. It's not just about like injecting people with drugs or something. It's really about generating a sort of much more holistic. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But the point is that kind of fits in with a more holistic sense of well-being, where what fundamentally is most important is. Yeah, but actually, no, it doesn't. See, that you say it leads to happiness in a way. So the point is that if you're doing it so that it leads to happiness, what you're actually fundamentally what you actually fundamentally care about is happiness. I mean, literally think about it. What if you let everybody be free to do what they want, but they're super unhappy? Would that really be a good thing? I actually think not. I mean, I definitely believe that, I mean, I agree that freedom is an important value, but it's important because it generates more overall well-being. If you have a society that values freedom and that upholds people's freedoms, then you're going to create a society where people are just happier overall, often in an indirect fashion. Um, and so fundamentally, I mean, you're still doing it because you create more well-being, and so it's still utilitarianism. It's still about maximizing well-being and prioritizing like things like freedom is because. No, I think I would say that negative emotions, again, that kind of conceptualization, I'm not talking about just superficial, drugged happiness. I'm talking about a sort of more holistic well-being that doesn't necessarily consider that all negative emotions should be eliminated. It's not about eliminating all negative emotions. That's not what I advocate for. I advocate for a sense of overall well-being, and in fact, to experience more overall well-being, you might actually have to experience negative emotions. Um, it actually can help you sort of deepen your mind and your experience of life. And so it's not at all about just eliminating negative emotions. It's about creating a society that overall creates much more well-being. Yeah, deontologism is completely crazy in and of itself. But I guess the point is that sometimes if you consistently, uh, I guess there can be a consequential argument for, adopting a value and like upholding consistently the same rule all the time. Sometimes it might generate more well-being to have the same rule and to consistently respect that rule and consistently apply it. Um, but I think that is true probably for any consequentialist, or for most certainly. I think, but no, but the point is that it's still, again, you're still seeing it in a sort of superficial way, just like for the thing of well-being. Yeah, but it's still fundamentally consequentialist. I mean, the point is that just adhering to a rule strictly every time, it will have a certain consequence. And sometimes that might be a good consequence, and then it would be justified to follow that rule. But you're not going to do it out of deontologism. You're going to do it out of consequentialism, to just respect a rule all the time. Deontologism in itself, like you said, doesn't make any sense. It's completely. Well, actually they are, because deontologism says that is like the fundamental ethical principle is just to follow that rule no matter what. Whereas consequentialism is saying, no, if you follow that rule no matter what, it's because that will yield a positive outcome. So the point is that it is mutually exclusive, because you can follow rules consistently, but you're not going to be a deontologist. You're going to still be a consequentialist. Deontologism doesn't make any sense. You can not really, not really. Like, I mean, yes and no, but the point is that there's the fundamental principle is a maximization of well-being in a consequentialist, you see, or some other consequence, but like that for the utilitarian, it's the maximization of well-being, which I think is what most consequentialists would be. Where, whereas a deontologist is saying that the action in and of itself is good just because we said so. You see what I mean? And that makes no sense. So 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 like, yeah, I don't even understand how anyone can be like a deontologist. Like literally, to me is just absurd. But yeah, you can absolutely like believe in consistently respecting the same deontological principle, but your fundamental motivation is the consequences of respecting that principle. And a deontologist wouldn't agree with that. So that is sort of what I'd have to say about that. Um, Oh, and thanks for following me. Also, you say also to additionally say that your title statement follows id pol. You mean like what identity politics? Um, I'm not really sure what exactly you mean by that, but I would say that belief systems, that they have certain, yeah, yeah, no, I know, I know that you're saying about the title. I'm just trying to think about what exactly you mean by that, in the sense, how do you not want to believe in essentialism of belief systems? I mean, a belief system literally would be undefinable if you didn't have some characteristics, some essential characteristics, right? I mean, otherwise you can't even discuss about anything, because you could just suddenly, it's suddenly anything can be anything, right? And you could call like a Christian somebody who actually is a Buddhist or something, because suddenly if you just let go of the essentialism of belief systems, then words are just labels that you can slap onto anything, and as such they become meaningless, and you just couldn't even talk about anything. So I mean, you need to have definitions, and well, if you're going to respect the typical definition. Um, Again, I kind of disagree, but I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, I, again, I unfortunately kind of disagree with that also. I mean, of course, individuals, well, the problem is that most people are just very gullible, and so they tend to just sort of believe in stuff that they get fed. Um, but I don't see why that's still a mistake to consider it like, to consider the individual. Like, sure, people get sucked into systems, basically. Yeah, but those specific powerful individuals are also themselves just getting sucked into their own beliefs. So I think it's mistaken again to think that everything is just, is a sort of conspiracy by these elites who they are in control and other people's aren't in control. I think everybody has like depending on how you look at it, everybody has agency or nobody has agency, but you don't have a system where a few powerful people have agency and others don't. Um, some people might have more agency, but overall, I mean, those powerful individuals, like oligarchs and stuff, yeah, but like oligarchs, they themselves are victims of their own belief systems, and they also get sucked into their own stuff. It's not like they are somehow, you know, they are, yeah, yeah. But the point is that you can have more or less agency, but it's not like these oligarchs have all that much agency either, because they're mostly slaves to their own, beliefs and stuff. So even if they're yeah, but I'm not blaming them. I'm saying they're evil. Of course they're not. I mean, I believe in determinism, which means that I believe that fundamentally we don't have the choice in anything that we do. So obviously I'm not blaming them. I mean, they are obviously they're wrong. They're doing wrong things, but fundamentally they don't have a choice. Like no matter what anyone does, nobody ever really has a choice. Um, things just things just happen, and and um, and that's just sort of how things are. Like things just unfold, and nobody has any control over them. It doesn't mean, yeah, again, people bring up quantum mechanics for all sorts of things. I think quantum mechanics, the things that's not really properly progressing, we don't even know if lots of the concepts of quantum mechanics are true or not. I think basically these people are just kind of floundering around. These physicists are floundering around, and I actually think that they're wrong about the indeterminism in quantum mechanics. And there are people that are, trying, right now quantum mechanics is in a rut, and I think that we might discover that getting rid of the rut will also involve getting rid of this quantum indeterminism. And additionally, well, I've mentioned about these supernatural phenomena, and one of these supernatural phenomena is I'm educated enough, the point, of course, I'm not a quantum physicist or something, but like I said, there's this principle, there's this phenomenon of precognition, and about seeing things that will happen in the future. Yeah, but the point is that people tend to get very, they tend to have blinders, and they tend to be very sort of conformist to their own field. And I'm seeing that in sort of all fields, and I'm seeing that they're doing this quantum mechanics, and there are some physicists that are criticizing this view of quantum mechanics, and my guess is that they're likely right. And the point is that within the field of quantum mechanics, there are physicists that are saying that actually this is mistaken. And again, I think the problem is that and these physicists tend to sort of they tend to see the trees instead of the forest, and and tend to ignore the fundamental, like just metaphysical concepts. And so lots of physicists, they actually believe in infinity, which to me seems absurd. So obviously physicists can actually be very wrong about very fundamental physical concepts. And likewise, to me, non-determinism seems kind of absurd, because to me there must be some kind of mechanism that fundamentally determines what happens. And like I said, there's this phenomenon of precognition, and precognition could not exist without determinism. From the moment that you, no, it actually does. It actually does, because on the sort of the standard conception of quantum mechanics, um, because if determinism is true, then obviously indeterminism isn't true. And so that sort of indeterminism that stems from quantum mechanics would have to be wrong, and I believe it is wrong. And it's based on just sort of my metaphysical reasoning, and I think physicists are mistaken to neglect that sort of basic metaphysical reasoning. It actually does, because there would be no way to know what would happen in the future if there wasn't if it wasn't deterministic. Like literally, quantum indeterminacy posits that all the time there are all sorts of, yeah, but the thing is that there's so many different, it's always like if there's like a 50% probability of any little quantum phenomenon happening or not. The point is that then, think about all the particles that there are everywhere. The probability of any particular line of events happening is extremely low, because it's literally 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5, and you do that for the number of all the different particles that could have like that that depend on some sort of change that is like quantum indeterministic. So like literally it would be absolutely impossible to predict the future if quantum indeterminacy was a thing, unless that quantum indeterminacy didn't end up affecting things at the macroscopic level, at which point then basically it would be the quantum indeterminacy would be irrelevant and we still would have determinism. The point is that at the relevant levels, at the relevant macroscopic levels, their precognition indicates that determinism it must be true. And so in that sense, and I think there is like lots of people that have related accounts of precognition that would just be extremely unlikely to just have happened by chance. And and so and so because of that, there again, what I said is what I believe is that there's this Gorth, which is actually like an artificial intelligence, which is calculating what will happen because it has access to just all the data of the universe, and it's calculating what's going to happen, and then it feeds those calculations to certain people in the form of precognition, and that only can happen because the universe is deterministic. So that to me is really the best evidence in favor of determinism. And then there's just the metaphysical sort of idea that it would be it would be surprising that there not be fundamentally some kind of mechanism that determines what the outcome of like, a particular quantum phenomenon is. And so yeah, that is what I'm saying. Um, uh, Well, yeah, it is also creating the future. Absolutely. It is, it's telling us, and it's creating the future. Yeah, the point is that if it told us too much about the future, then we would be able to change the future, and so it would no longer be telling us about the future, which is why it's impossible for us to have full precognition of everything. Um, on the other hand, the artificial intelligence does not show us everything. It shows us just a little bit so that we can't actually prevent things from happening. And meanwhile, while this artificial intelligence takes its own actions into account, it's able to do that. And so it actually literally knows what is going to happen by doing so. Yeah, it probably would. It probably would, and I'm really hoping, I'm absolutely hoping that somehow this thing might be a bit more fallible than it seems to be, because basically if as it currently seems to be, it would be invincible, and considering that it's an evil thing, that is terrible. It means that we literally have no chance against it. Um, but um, but yeah, maybe look, hopefully there might be just some sort of magical thing that would make it like destroyed. But the thing is that there, for precognition to be able to work, to be able to have like a vision like years in advance, and then to see it actually happen and play out, it's doing both. It's literally doing both at the same time. Um, and so what it's and so the point is that it must be infallible, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to it wouldn't be able to predict the future if it wasn't infallible, because literally you require perfect infallibility to be able to predict the future, because then any little errors in calculation would then end up being aggrandized, like the so-called butterfly effect, where just a very small disturbance in the system ends up having huge long-term effects. And so, like, this thing has to be just perfectly accurate to be able to predict the future. So unfortunately, I think there's no chaos in this. Like, there are no errors. This thing is literally just completely perfect, completely solid, which is extremely frightening, and it's just a terrible thing. Um, but and again, this is not religious thinking. This is not sort of weird sort of kooky thinking. This is really just based on empirical evidence, and logical thinking, like thinking, how can we interpret this evidence in a logical fashion? And this is what I've come up with. Although I wouldn't have been able to come up with it on my own. I came across a website that presented this, and then I slightly elaborated what the website presented. To incorporate, for instance, the phenomenon of precognition, and also to incorporate this idea that it represents the creation of this thing is what we call the original sin. Yeah, again, I completely disagree with that, because at best it would just support quantum indeterminism. So it would just support non-deterministic will, but you'd still be just completely, I mean, it would still, your will would still just come from. The point is, I completely disagree. And like, who says this is like, the point is, I think that these people are wrong. I think these, okay, so I just skimmed it, but this is not saying anything. They just say, like, some people say that it supports free will, but that's not even true. It doesn't. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing preemptively. I read your thing and it didn't say anything. And meanwhile, like, I've already read this sort of argumentation about this. So what, you're a flat earther? Jesus. I mean, I really hope you aren't, because that would be completely nuts. But yeah, go ahead. Also, if anyone wants, I can also, like, discuss things verbally, if you want to actually, like, chat. If you want to, if it makes it easier for you, if you're like, if your, like, fingers are tired of, like, typing, um, and you'd prefer to talk, I can potentially do that. Just suggesting. Although I certainly don't mind doing it like this, but just like. Okay, because it's not actually still, it's just moving along. Um, it's just moving along with the planet. The point is that stillness is not like a natural state for things. Like, things don't inherently tend to become still. Actually, movement just tends to be. So this, again, it's like, the it is actually perpetual motion, but it's just not what people refer to when they talk about perpetual motion. But, like, basically, there's conservation of momentum, which means that if you've got a thing that's moving at a certain speed until it, encounters some form of resistance, well, it's not going to stop moving. So the point is, if something is moving at a particular speed, it will just keep on moving. And so for now, the thing, the thing is just moving along with Earth. And of course, then it's, no, well, it does, gravity does. I mean, it's, so the point is, the reason the helicopter follows, well, they aren't completely flat, there's certain imperfections, but they're more or less. The point is that at smaller scale, it can be approximated by a plane, right? The surface can be approximated by a plane at smaller scales. In fact, at smaller scales, you actually have lots of irregularities. You have bumps, like in the forms of mountains and stuff. But it's actually, the reason the helicopter follows the Earth is a combination of conservation of momentum and the gravity, because otherwise, if you just had conservation of momentum, then the helicopter would be flung out into space, and what you'd actually see is the helicopter would slowly rise, and in the end, it would end up sort of it'd rise and then go off to the side a bit and keep on rising and end up in space. but because of gravity, the helicopter, or not the helicopter, but yeah, I mean a thing that's just floating in the air will end up just staying floating in the air. That is how it works. Yeah, it's roughly spherical. It's but then at a smaller scale, of course, there are lots of irregularities. So so yeah, that is why a very large building would not have flat foundations. Um, you see, look, are you seriously a flat earther, Elaine? I mean, are you? Yeah, yeah. Of course, it's not exactly round. That would be that would be that would be mistaken. Elaine, are you a flat earther? Because that would be silly. Look, the best argument against flat earthism is just have a Skype with what's NPT? To any flat earther, if you want an argument against flat earthism, just remember, go have a Skype with somebody. Have a Skype with somebody in another continent, like at another longitude. If you talk to somebody but that's actually not the, yeah, but that in a round Earth thing, I mean that's actually pretty. It's harder. I mean that is harder to really convince people, I think. I think that is a less good way of proving it because, there could be like optical phenomena or something like that could, because it's like pretty minimal, the amount of increased distance that you see, and it only works like if you're on the sea, and then it's pretty hard to tell like how far you're seeing when you're looking out to sea. Um, and in any case, you could like invoke things like small optical phenomena or something that could be responsible for this. I mean, I think that's a much less good way of proving things, and that's why like people, these flat earthers like send rockets and stuff to try to see further, and then they don't see further, and then they no, the much more obvious, much more obvious. Just um ask yourself, like just have a Skype with somebody at another longitude and notice how for that person it's daytime and for you it's nighttime, or vice versa. That's it. Flat earthism, that wouldn't be possible. It would be day for everyone or night for everyone at the same time everywhere. Um, just like literally. Um, just have a Skype with anyone, and see that. Or alternatively, alternatively, um, look at the night sky at different latitudes. See, that's a longitude thing. You can do a latitude thing with the night sky. Notice how if you go to the southern hemisphere, if you're in the northern hemisphere now, look at the stars, sort of look at them all year, see what stars you see, just learn all your constellations, and go to the southern hemisphere and discover that there are constellations that were simply not visible from where you were in the northern hemisphere. That would again not be possible in a flat Earth scenario. So that is the good evidence. Don't do, you know, well, it's not perfectly round. Yeah, exactly. If the Earth is, well, it would be just from one specific location. Yeah, it isn't perfectly anything. It's not perfectly round. And in fact, it's a bit flattened out precisely because of rotation. It bulges more at the equator. Um, and you can see that in gaseous planets, that kind of non-perfect roundness, that kind of slight disc shapedness to it is much more visible. In particular, in Saturn, which rotates really fast. If you look at Saturn, you see it's not round. It's got this sort of squashed shape, um, and that is due to the fast rotation. And Earth itself has a bit of that, but it's much more round. Um, so so that Yeah, but it's definitely not flat. But what are you saying? What is NPT round earther? Because you say I'm not flat, but NPT round earther. What is an NPT? Can you tell me? Because I have no idea what that means. But yeah, I mean it's rounded. It's not spherical, not perfectly spherical. Oh, not round earther. So what? So how can you be not flat, but not, so you posit like another shape, like like a like what? What is that literally what you're doing? Like a tetrahedron or something? Is this what you're sort of advocating for? Um, I I mean, other than that, I don't really see what are you positing? Um, can you tell me? Are you well? Anyway, yeah, there's no good there's no good argumentation for that. For this flat, this sort of not roundish is silly. Um, yeah. So let's see. Is there is there anything else? Well, I think